Hello. Last time we were speaking about values. Those are the things that give you meaning. Those are the goals that set your direction in life. Is what you're aiming to accomplish or to achieve or to obtain. Um, but now we have to go to the second building block, which is the norms. These are very closely related, norms and values. The norms are what are expected of you or what is allowed of you in order to try to achieve those values. So, for example, if you're trying to get income, for example, or a good job, then then you go to school. So, going to school is the expectation or the norm of a lot of my students, anyways. People expect them to uh, go to school in order to learn, in order to become independent, which is a value. And most people internalize these norms and they act because they realize that they are right. These are good expectations in order to try to achieve the values. So there's four types of norms that were noticed by one of America's earliest sociologist, William Graham Sumner. And he wrote a book about these norms in about, I think, 1905. He was working out of the University of Chicago, which is the first or the second sociology department in the United States. And he noticed that there's four types of expectations. Now, we'll go over one, maybe two today, depending on what type of time we have. So his first type was the folk way, which, as the name implies, it's just the way of the folk. Now, most norms, it has been noticed, like the folk ways, are not consciously thought about. We just automatically do them. They become habits. So, for example, if you say thank you, I say you're welcome. I don't even think about it. Okay, but that's a norm. That's an expectation involving politeness. So, folkways are have to do with etiquette, with manners, with politeness, and most sociologists follow William Graham Sumner in saying that folkways don't distinguish so much between right and wrong. They distinguish between polite behavior and rude behavior. So there are norms of not being rude or of being polite. Those are the folkways. And they're very important because they're sort of like the social grease, if you will. We didn't have them. People would be bumping into each other, not saying excuse me. Um, People wouldn't be giving signals as to which direction they're going, um, which is, of course, where I came from in Florida, nobody does. So that's a norm that's violated quite frequently there, but not here in Wisconsin, I've noticed. Um, and not beeping the horn, for example, here in La Crosse, I've noticed a lot of people very polite. They won't beep the horn at you, even if you have the right of, even if you don't have the right of way, they will give you the right of way, oftentimes. So that's a politeness norm that we have in this part of the country. Excuse me. Okay, so that's etiquette. So write down some of these norms that you take for granted every day. You don't think about; they become automatic. So I just gave you one, please and thank you. I'll give you another one, and I'll give you a couple minutes to maybe think about while I'm talking. Opening the door for somebody uh, who's coming after you. You open the door, you let them through, and then they're supposed to say thank you. That's a politeness thing, and you say you're welcome, or as you say around here, you betcha. So, um, okay, so you can name some others. You can write them down. Uh, but now realize that when you're writing them down, they may seem innocuous, not that important, but generally you wouldn't think of not doing them. It's so automatic, it's so ingrained in you. You've been taught for so many years to say please and thank you and you're welcome. And would you please pass the potatoes? And you speak softly, you don't yell at people. I mean, these are all folkways. So, lining up in a queue in order to pay for something in a store, that's a politeness norm. Okay, people generally don't cut in line. All right, but if they do, then there's another norm set when people deviate from the expectations. So the reactions to the deviations are themselves part of the norm system. So, for example, if you cut in line, you might expect that somebody who's in back of you is going to say, "Would you please go to the end of the line?" Or or they may say something sarcastic, like you know, something like your mother must be proud of you. So oftentimes these reactions are called sanctions. And generally, when we talk about sanctions, we talk about negative sanctions. Like if you don't do something that's expected, then someone in your group, even if it's out in public, that's still a group, will chastise you or will give you sarcasm. So, for example, if you open the door and somebody walks through and doesn't acknowledge that you helped them and doesn't say thank you might sarcastically say, "You're welcome." When you do that, that's a negative sanction towards that other person. But now you notice the types of sanctions that you get from folkways are sometimes non-existent. People don't enforce them, or they're very light. They're not harsh, just very light reminders. So, for example, if you're at the dinner table and you're excited and you're talking, but you have your mouth full. So somebody might say, "Oh, would you please close your mouth when you're eating and talk later." So even the reminders like that are considered negative sanctions. Now there are positive sanctions. Okay, negative sanctions are punishments, but they're positive sanctions. If you do something really well, somebody might compliment you or give you a pat in the back or a pat in the head and say, "Nice job." That's a positive sanction. That's a reward. That psychologists might talk about rewards and punishments. Sociologists talk about negative sanctions and positive sanctions because they're part of the norm system. Let's move on to, let's do one more type or category of norm. Um, More. Now, more is spelled M-O-R-E with an accent. It's the French word and has the word morality right in it. So now you get a sense that this type of norm doesn't just separate rudeness from politeness, but separates right from wrong, and therefore they have some moral force. Which means that if you violate these mores, you might expect to get harsher sanctions because because you're violating an expectation that's very important for not only yourself but for the group. So oftentimes, if you violate a norm multiple times, let's say, then actually that threatens the authority structure of a group. It actually maybe even threatens the cohesion or the group itself. So, for example, if you start mouthing off to your dad, I don't think anybody here would do that, but if you did, the first time would be yelling back at you, and the second time maybe more yelling at you. Third time, he may hit you. And the reason why is when you keep doing things multiple times like that, it threatens his authority and it threatens the structure of the group itself. So the structure of the group itself is a value, and without the, the existence of the group, none of the other values get accomplished. So this is why mores tend to get harsher sanctions. Now, what are some of these mores? Um, So, for example, I know some Hispanic families, Caribbean families, Haitian families. If you come in the door, you have to go to everyone in the house and greet them. And if they're sort of strangers, you can shake their hands. If they're family members, you might give them a hug, maybe a kiss on the cheek, and you have to do that. Because if you don't do that, you will get yelled at, most likely. Um, and maybe even physically hit, because you're showing a lack of respect. So in those types of families, um, those ethnic groups, they tend to value respect for parents or for elderly in general a lot more than, let's say, people in my family. If I came in the door, I didn't have to go say hello to anybody. And it was fine with them. If we came in the door and went right up to my room and started doing homework without saying hello, they love it because going to school, doing homework is also a value. Okay, so that the rudeness and I'm sorry, the rudeness and politeness, those are the folkways. Right and wrong, those are mores. Now, I tend to disagree with people who say the folkways are only are not involved with morality, with right and wrong. Because if you violate something two or three times in a row, then you start to get harsh sanctions, which sort of tells you that this is that multiple infractions of folkways are actually fall into the more category. And after all, being polite, um, isn't that something that is right to do? So I'm sort of in the minority there. If you want to say that there's a distinction between rudeness and politeness, and I'm right and wrong, that's fine. I tend to think that all norms, all values have a moral base to them. Okay, so next time we'll go into taboos. Which are, the sanctions for taboos are even harsher and more race. And then we'll also talk about laws. And just to give you a foretaste, laws are different from all the other three categories. The other three categories, the norms are not written down anywhere. They're just agreed upon within a group. And the only way you can tell if it's agreed upon is when you don't do something that is expected of you. You violate the law, then you see the reaction of the group, and then you realize, oh, yeah, that they share these ideas, they share these norms, and that's what gives them their power is the collective agreement on norms and also values. So we'll go over taboos next time. Um, Usually they're all taboos are also not written down. Laws are written down. Not only are the laws written down, but their sanctions have to be written down. So that's a they're completely different type of norm because of that. Okay, so we'll see you next time. Thank you very much for your kind attention.